All right, so let's get right into it. A document just dropped that is sending absolute shockwaves through the political world. It's called the Discaya Affidavit. We're talking about a sworn statement that names dozens of public officials in a huge alleged corruption scheme. And yeah, the fallout has been, well, it's been immediate and pretty intense.
And that's pretty much exactly what it felt like, right? The second this affidavit hit the public, it was like a grenade went off in the middle of the news cycle. Suddenly, you're seeing names everywhere. Congressmen, engineers, even the Speaker of the House, all tangled up in this massive story about kickbacks. The public shock was just instant.
You know, in the middle of all that noise and scandal, a really important question kind of gets lost. What does it actually mean to be named in a document like this? That's what we're going to break down right here. We're going to get past the crazy headlines and really understand the substance of what's going on. So let's start with that grenade itself. To really get a handle on the fallout, we first have to understand what an affidavit is, and just as importantly, what it isn't. Okay, so a sworn statement, an affidavit, is basically one person's story, written down and told under oath. Think of it as a raw account. It's got memories, it's got personal grievances, and of course, it's packed with some really serious allegations. But here is the single most important part to remember. An affidavit is just the starting point for an investigation. It is absolutely not a final verdict. And that idea leads us right to the most critical theme we're going to talk about today, this legal firewall that stands between a simple accusation and an actual conviction. Let's just pause on that for a second. Seeing your name pop up in an affidavit doesn't automatically make you a criminal. It doesn't mean you're guilty. It just means you've been mentioned in someone else's version of events. The real work of justice, that has to come next.
And that work is called due process. This is that firewall I was talking about, the thing that separates an accusation from a conviction. See, for a name in an affidavit to become a real legal problem, investigators have to prove that person actually participated in, benefited from, or consented to the crime being alleged. Without that proof, a mention is just, well, it's just hearsay.
So how do they prove it? They need this, corroborating evidence. This is the hard stuff, you know? The independent proof that takes a claim and turns it into a credible case. We're talking about the paper trail, contracts, bank transfers, vouchers, stuff that exists completely outside of what one person said in their testimony. And this really gets to the heart of the legal process. On one side, you've got an allegation. It's a claim. It's a starting point for a probe. But on the other side, you have evidence, actual, verifiable proof that can be the basis for a conviction. One kicks the whole thing off. The other is supposed to be how it ends.
Okay, so now that we've got the legal framework down, let's actually apply it. Because if you really want to understand this affidavit, you can't just see it as one long list of names. You have to realize that not all mentions are created equal.
This is where the real nuance comes in. You can actually map every name in this document into one of three different tiers. First up, Tier 1, the directly implicated. These are the people accused of actually demanding or receiving money. Then you've got Tier 2, the contextually mentioned. Think of them as political backers or people linked by association, but with no specific crime alleged against them. And finally, Tier 3, the peripheral names, people who are basically just part of the background scenery in the story.
So why does this even matter? It matters because this map shows you the nuance that gets completely steamrolled by those explosive headlines. Lumping every single person together isn't just unfair, it's flat out inaccurate. The level of alleged involvement is totally different from one name to the next.
But that brings up a pretty big question, right? If just being mentioned isn't proof of anything, why name drop so many powerful people? Well, for that answer, we have to look past the law books and step into the world of political strategy.
Look, there are a ton of strategic reasons to name drop in an affidavit. It could be a way to show you've got powerful connections, or maybe to shift blame onto someone else. It can be used to scare your rivals, get on the good side of investigators, or just be a bargaining chip. In politics, an affidavit can absolutely be a weapon.
And here's a really telling detail from this specific case. The fact that the couple who wrote the affidavit immediately asked for state protection, that's a huge signal. It tells us this document isn't just a testimony, it's also a calculated political move.
So, where does that leave us? What's the big takeaway here? As people trying to stay informed, how do we cut through all the noise of a story like this and see what actually matters?
This is the perfect way to think about it. Getting your name in an affidavit puts a huge spotlight on you. It means people are going to start asking questions. But it is not a search warrant, and it is definitely not a verdict of guilt.
At the end of the day, our system is designed this way for a reason, Basic fairness demands that we treat these documents with caution. Their whole purpose is to kick off a formal investigation, to start a process, not to unleash an instant trial by public opinion.
And this is the danger if we forget that. Look, we all want transparency, but if we abandon due process just because we're in a rush for answers, all we're really left with is weaponized rumor. The public deserves both things, to know who is being accused and to see the hard evidence that separates a whisper from a conviction.
And that leaves us with the real challenge, doesn't it? It's a tightrope we all have to walk, demanding accountability from our leaders while also holding on to that fundamental principle that everyone is innocent until proven guilty. That is the real test, not just for our justice system, but for all of us.